I love this music. Hey everybody, my name's Becca, and if you guys don't know me, I wrangle students, college students, and young adults here at FCC, and I love it. It's so much fun. Oh, thanks. They're awesome. We've got a great group of students and young adults here at FCC. And if you guys remember, I did have a quick question from my last message. The last time I spoke was in March, and we did a Bless series. How many of you guys actually took the spiritual gift test at the end of my message with the QR code? Anyone remember that? Okay, all right, a couple of you, cool. All right, so if you are interested in wanting to take that and you're like, I want to learn how to connect and do all those things and use the gifts that God has given you and actually enjoy the service that you're doing, please come see me after the service. I'd love to get you connected with that. And speaking of enjoyment, today's message is going to be me kind of kicking off this series about soul care of joy. There's a lot of mixed messages about joy in the world, and I have had my own interesting views on joy throughout my life, and so I get the privilege of deconstructing that and reconstructing that a little bit with you today. I actually want to start off with a little activity. You're going to kind of get to see a little bit of like what my students do. I'm not going to make you play musical chairs or anything like that, although that would be fun. I am going to ask you guys to get comfortable talking to your neighbors. That's not too hard. You just did it. Good for you. And if you're an introvert, I'm so sorry. We'll take breaks. We'll go slow. It's going to be okay. I promise. But what I'm actually going to ask you guys to do is a little joy activity that I learned from a good friend of mine named Sid. So this past year, I've been in a cohort with some other women in ministry, and it was lovely. It was wonderful and super, super awesome. And Sid was our coach, and she had us at each session. Every week, we'd start off by sharing something that brought us joy that week. It could be as simple as a fuzzy blanket or a dinner with a good friend, whatever it may be, whatever brought you joy. And then you attune to each other. So you just kind of listen as they share their joy memory, and you kind of see some of their like nonverbal cues. Maybe their face lights up or something like that. So I'm going to give you guys a minute. Turn to your neighbor and share something that brought you joy this week. Go. Okay, it sounds like you guys are about done now. Good? All right, so you guys need about a minute and a half. All right, got it. So, all right, introverts, please feel free to recover now. It's okay, you're good. So proud of you. Now, you might be thinking, why are we doing this? Well, my good friend Sid, like I talked about, she and her husband wrote this book. And they talk a lot about joy in this book, and this was something that I didn't quite understand the practice of attunement and finding joy throughout my cohort. I was like, I'm kind of grumbly about it. I hate this. But then at the end of the cohort, I realized as we all came together at a retreat center, we're all like, wow, that actually made a lot of sense to us because we shifted our focus of the things going on around us and just focused on the simple joys of life. And sometimes it's really easy to forget to do that, and it's such a simple practice, and so I just wanted you guys to practice that today. I do want to shift over a little bit and tell you a couple of things that bring me joy, because I've got some pictures. Oh, go back. There we go. Okay. These are some of the things that bring me joy, because now that you guys are thinking of all your memories of joy, I love people, and I love food. I love gardening, I love football, and I love big, drooly dogs. They're super cute. And I love family, chosen family, friends, and I love working with students and young adults. So those are the things that bring me a lot of joy, especially like beaches and mountains and stuff. I made sure those were in the background. But as you're kind of thinking about the things that bring you joy, we kind of talked about something that happened to you this week. I'm going to ask you guys to turn to your neighbors again. And I would like you to please share 3 things that bring you joy. Maybe not something that's happened to you, but just 3 things that bring you joy. Attune to each other and then trade, okay? Is that fair? Okay, go. Okay, you guys good? Good? All right. Thank you guys so much for humoring me. I really appreciate it. I know that for some of you that might be uncomfortable, and for some of you, you couldn't wait. And I love that. I love the diversity of that. And so I'm going to chat for a little while so you guys get another break. But I want to talk a little bit about what joy is and what joy is not. Because I think it's important that we sort of define that a little bit. I do have to remember to use my clicker. Oh, thank you, Toby. Joy is chronic, habitual, multifaceted, and worthy. Joy is not happiness, easy, lazy, or unwanted. And in that book that I had mentioned earlier by Sid and Jeff, there's a quote in there that I think perfectly describes what joy is. Joy is the background music to our lives. It's the soundtrack. It's always there. We just don't always know how to access it. But when we do, joy changes everything. Joy brings us home, the place God made for us. And the Bible also has a lot to say about joy, and we're going to get into that a little bit. I picked a passage in Deuteronomy. It's like 8 verses. It's not too bad. I'm going to break it into 2 parts, and I'm going to read it for you now. It says, "Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah, across from Jericho. There the Lord showed him the whole land, from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, and the whole region from the valley of Jericho, the city of palms as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him," I'm going to pause for a second. This kind of reminds me of in The Lion King when Mufasa takes Simba up and is like, "Look at all the land I have given you." Okay, so imagine that for just a second, all right? Okay. "This is the land I promised an oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when I said, I will give it to your descendants. I will have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over into it. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days until the time of weeping and mourning was over." Now you might be thinking, "Becca, there's no mention of joy in that passage." That's correct. Good job. Good observation. But think for a minute what it would be like to be at the end of your life, looking out on everything, reimagining all of the life moments and experiences that you've had, the good, the bad, all of those things. And think about that for a minute. I'm going to give a little context into Moses' life. And if it helps you when you're trying to focus to close your eyes and just picture it, feel free to do that. But I'm just going to kind of help you get into Moses' shoes for a minute. Okay? "You were put in a basket at birth as a baby by your sister to hopefully be saved from the persecution from a Pharaoh. After being pulled out of the Nile River in Egypt, you ended up in the hands of Pharaoh's daughter, who raises you as one of her own. You become an employee of the Pharaoh, the one whom you were being saved from at birth. Ultimately, you flee Egypt when you are older because one day you decide to kill an Israelite, one of your own and a slave of the Egyptians at the time. You hide in the wilderness for quite some time and meet your significant other. You're minding your own business, and one day God reveals himself to you through a burning bush and tells you to go back to Egypt. And you have to face your past and bring the Israelites out of captivity into the promised land. With lots of assistance from your brother, wife, and God, and your own resistance, you decide to go. You eventually, after 10 plagues, lots of bargaining, and many mistakes later, lead the Israelites out of Egypt. And this is where we find ourselves in Deuteronomy 34. Moses looking back at his life. He's looking out, he's looking back, and despite the current grief of not being able to enter the promised land, he finds joy, because that is what joy is. It's both gratitude and grief commingling together. It's acceptance of the life that we have. Open your eyes. Joy is not a singular choice. It is a lifestyle of cultivating a habit of seeking joy through gratitude. My good friend Christine shared a study with me that actually came out of UC Berkeley back in 2018. It was a $3.1 million scientific study of gratitude. And what was discovered was the positive power of gratitude in our lives. This study concludes that practicing gratitude is life-giving and can decrease stress, blood pressure, blood sugar, and have other positive biological impacts. It also concluded that practicing gratitude can improve and stabilize our mood, better our relationships, and bring us more intimacy and promote deeper connections with the world and people around us. And for all my teenagers in the room, if you practice gratitude, UC Berkeley says that found that teenagers have better grades, greater willpower to resist destructive behavior patterns, better friendships and relationships, and better self-esteem patterns leading to more fulfilled lives. And lastly, the best way to practice gratitude, according to UC Berkeley, was to practice gratitude journaling. Isn't that interesting? And I love that somebody was like, let's do a study on this, because I don't think that's something most people would think to study, but I think that's really wise. And what we can conclude from this study is that practicing gratitude is the pathway to joy. It can be part of our healing and maturing process throughout our lives. Okay, I have one more ask. If you could please turn to your neighbor one more time. I promise it's the last one, okay? But I'm going to ask you guys to actually practice some gratitude, because it would not be right of me to talk about it and not ask you to practice it and give you time to practice it. So you're going to turn to your neighbor again, and you are going to name 3 things that you're grateful for today. Now, that's different than joy, so think about that. But what are 3 things you're grateful for today? Okay? Go. Okay. Everybody done? All right. Practicing gratitude, as my friend Christine described, is like a treasure hunt. Gratitude is us avidly and consistently looking out for God's goodness and faithfulness in our daily lives. Now, this is where the questions start to pour in. Becca, what if I'm not in a good season of life right now? What if things are difficult? What if I'm grieving the loss of a loved one? What if I'm trying and it isn't enough? I get that. These questions rang so deeply true for me in many seasons, and I've totally been there. Life is full of different seasons of ups and downs, dark and light, but I also want to remind us today that just because it is a bad season doesn't mean it's a bad life. If the present moment feels too bleak, what if we helped each other shift our gaze to look back at God's faithfulness and try to look forward with hope and expectance? This is why this is called a practice. Gratitude and finding joy takes effort. It takes discipline, and it takes energy. It also doesn't mean we negate the sad feelings in our lives or the grief in our lives, but in fact, we allow and learn to let them commingle, embracing life's spectrum of emotions and holding space for each of them. How many of you have seen the movie Inside Out? Okay, quite a bit of you. Good. Okay. The second one is coming out soon. The students are going to go see it towards the end of this month. I'm really excited about it. But I'm actually going to share with you one of my favorite clips from this movie, because I think they do a fantastic job of kind of visually describing what it means for grief and sadness and joy to all commingle together. So I'm going to give you a little backstory before we jump into the clip in case you haven't seen it. But joy is one of the emotions that's depicted in Riley's head, and she's currently trying to escape the land of dumped memories with Bing Bong, an old memory of Riley's childhood toy. And Joy is upset because all she's ever wanted is for Riley to feel joy. And she has worked hard to keep sadness away from all of Riley's memories as to not color them blue with sadness. Okay, let's see what happens. Thanks, Josh. Joy realizes that Riley can never experience the fullness of life, the canon of human emotion, without sadness, because joy is not the absence of sadness, but the acceptance of its role in our lives. Our sadness, grief, and non-joy-filled emotions make us human and allow us to connect more deeply with others and the world around us. So how do we hold these emotions with one another? And what does this information propel us to do? I believe that joy prompts us to compassion and kindness for our communities and for each other. These emotions prompt us to sit with our fellow humans and be the hands and feet and crying shoulder of Jesus. It allows us to not only ask for help and let others in, but allows us to comfort and celebrate others around us in a very Jesus-like way. I'm going to share one more clip with you from Inside Out. It's when sadness sits with Bing Bong in his grief over losing his rocket as Riley begins to forget about him. To give you an example of what this looks like. Sorry if I made you cry. This movie gets me every time. But how beautifully did sadness find the positive amidst the grief without negating the feelings that naturally existed for Bing Bong in his current stage of life? She didn't shift to toxic positivity, but instead she exemplified empathy that we only gain through our own sadness. This is what our grief and joy propel us to do, to sit with our hurting communities, with each other, and to carry each other's burdens. This is joy, and this is Jesus. Learning that we can sit with and that we can be sat with in all of our emotions, fears, anxieties, grief, and celebrations is being our most vulnerable and present selves. And this is true joy because joy is found in community. When we are depleted of joy, I want to remind us of three things. And these are the three practices I want you to walk away with today. 1, practice gratitude even when it hurts. Attune to each other, find a friend to help you, whatever it takes. 2, lean into and on your community. Ask to be sat with. Choose to sit with others. This is being Jesus to each other and ourselves. And lastly, I want to leave you with one more verse today. It's from Psalm 16:11. It says, "You make known to me the path of life. You fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand." Because when we sit in the presence of the Lord, our eyes are open to the faithfulness and goodness we have experienced in this life, prompting gratitude and activating our joy. This propels us to live like Jesus and experience the fullness of life. As we close today, and the band joins me on stage, I want to pray a prayer of gratitude over you as I close. It's written by a lady named Rebecca Ruiz. Let's pray. Holy Spirit, open my heart to understand how precious I am to you, how loved I am by you. Open the eyes of my soul to see the gifts you have put before me this day. Give me the grace to recognize each encounter with you. Teach me to respond in gratitude and to grow in gratitude. Teach me to be generous as you are generous with me, and to collaborate with you in serving my brothers and sisters for your greater glory. Amen. Thanks, everybody.